Hello, welcome to the Six Comms podcast.
Thank you,
Lovely to
Lisa.
see you, Vadivu. How are you?
I am grateful to be here, and it's always wonderful to connect with you.
Yes, we were just saying in the warm up section that I haven't known you for that long. I think we've had like two interactions with each other, but I feel like we're really good friends. That's
Yes,
quite amazing.
yes. The
Um,
connection is just there.
yeah, really connected. So I'm very, very happy to be speaking to you about this concept of inner billionaire heart set. Just to listen into a secret, I did suggest the title Inner Billionaire Mindset, and you corrected me, which I'm so glad you did, to heart set. So maybe let's start by helping listeners to understand the terms that we're going to be using in this episode. So you use the terms inner billionaire heart set, as I've said, and inner wealth. Can you share with us what they mean to you?
Yes. So I would actually love to start with a quote. It's by Dr. Richard Teo. He was a millionaire doctor in Singapore who lived what you would call a more material life. And after he was diagnosed with cancer, his views on life changed. So I want to share a few excerpts from his lecture that he gave medical students. This was long ago. He has passed away now. Yeah. So when referring to his work, he said, it was just a job. Patients were just a source of income. We become so lost that we serve nobody else but ourselves. Don't let society tell you how to live. Don't let the media tell you what you're supposed to do. Those things happened to me, and I led this life thinking that these are going to bring me happiness. You have to decide whether you want to serve yourself, whether you're going to make a difference in somebody else's life. Because true happiness doesn't come from serving yourself. And he's not the only one to realize such things at the end of life, right? There's also Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She was a psychiatrist, a death and dying expert who worked with many dying patients over many years. And she said at the end of life, people tend to ask themselves a few questions. Did I give and receive love? Did I become all I can be? Did I leave the planet a little better? So what's inner wealth got to do with all this? Inner wealth is about living a meaningful life which honors such what I would call timeless wisdom and truths. They're not new, right? It's been known for ages, but it's to really renew our commitment to this such wisdom. And so inner wealth emerges when we have a deep connection with ourselves, with others, and with life through 5 pathways: be, love, serve, grow, play. So I can go a little bit into some of them if you like, to define what I mean.
Yes, I'd love to.
So love, serve, and grow, that would actually be the core elements. When we usually talk about love, usually our mind goes to our families. And that's a great place to start. But we would say don't end there, because all of life wants to be protected. The person walking on the street is someone else's family member, has the same desire to not suffer, the same desire to be well. And I want to read one more quote from the John Templeton Foundation website. They're a philanthropic organization. Overcoming the biggest challenges society currently faces, such as pandemic diseases, global poverty, and climate change, requires a sense of universal love that includes distant strangers in order for humanity to flourish. So it's really opening up our hearts to more and more circles of people, animals, nature. So for me, service flows very naturally from this. When you care about life, you want to make a difference to others. You want to reduce their suffering. You want to enhance their quality of life. And service can take place in countless ways. It can be super tiny. Like I have clients who say that they remember that their colleague bought something that they love to eat when they had to stay back during lunch, right? Yeah, they remember something small like that, which happened long ago. And then it can be much bigger. If you're a leader with a lot more power, the decisions you make can serve a lot of more lives. And finally, the growth is about, we talk a lot about financial growth, economic growth, career growth. Our growth is character growth, growing in your virtues like wisdom and courage and love and service, so that you can serve even more effectively and benefit others. So an inner billionaire is someone who's humbly trying to embody these values. Given the trials and tests of every day, they are trying to live out these values as best as they can. And we came up with the word billionaire because people are fascinated by billionaires, Lisa, right? And we wanted to be playful and provocative and purposeful in directing people's attention gently to this other kind of billionaire and say, hey, here's another kind of billionaire that you can be inspired by and aspire to become. So that's us kind of being cheeky and playful.
I love this. I really love it. Because, straight away, there's so many connotations to that word billionaire. So you've certainly been provocative, because straight away I was onto your website thinking, okay, billionaire. I was thinking of all like those famous celebrities and lots of money and luxury. And it was all very superficial. And I was like, oh, that's not really my cup of tea. So I wonder what she's really saying here, because then you've got the inner part and the inner part. And then, as I see on your logo behind you, grow your light. And you don't put those two images or visuals together. So what is it you're proposing? And so now I really see what you're saying through those 5 pillars. So the be, love, serve, grow, and play. The thing that actually, the reference that came to my mind, and a person that I follow and have admired for a long time, is Priya Parker, and she's a facilitator in the US. Yeah?
I love her.
I love her. So her book is behind me. If you're listening to this, I have
I can see it.
Books, and it's there. And she wrote a book called The Art of Gathering. And it spoke to me so much. I read it quite a number of years ago, and I'm still working in organization. And I heard her do a podcast episode, and she shared in that podcast episode some wisdom that was passed down to her from her mother, who said, if you want to show up with any kind of significance, or you want to serve and have some kind of valuable legacy in your life, then you need to ask these questions. What sparks joy for you? What are you good at? And what does the world need at the moment? And that stayed with me, and it really aligns with what you've just spoken about. So listeners, I would highly recommend looking Priya Parker up. She's all about how we connect and how we gather and make real impact in the world. So that's what it reminds me of as you were speaking about those 5 pillars.
And I would just quickly add, right? Billionaire and inner billionaire are not mutually exclusive. So billionaire can be an inner billionaire too. That would be amazing. If we had billionaires who were inner billionaires, wow, the world would transform a lot, because they have a lot of resources that can be channeled in ways that are more wise and just and compassionate.
Yeah. So on a day-to-day, if we're living in this way and following those 5 pillars, how does that impact our daily interactions and decisions?
The first word that comes to me is really meaningful. Life becomes more meaningful. Because of the way that inner billionaire is, in service mode and caring, people around the person usually will feel served and cared for and seen and heard and nourished and safe to reveal more about themselves. And I would add inspired, but the inspired is a little bit different. It's not like, wow, you're so great, and the billionaire is egotistical and, having their ego stoked. No, the inner billionaire is more likely to put a mirror and say, if you see anything good in me, it is in you too. So the person usually around the inner billionaire will feel inspired to become a better person themselves. That is the beauty of it. And the other thing I would say is ripple effect. Because if I'm kind to you, Lisa, you're more likely to be kind to the next person you meet after this program, and it's just more likely to ripple out. And in terms of decisions, I think the main thing is how are my words, actions, choices positively affecting others, including, of course, myself, but others matter too. That is the main thing. It is not easy to always live this way. I don't manage to always live this way, but that attempt to be more conscious. For me, communication is an act of service. So the more we communicate with intentionality, that is a service to others too.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about that. Communication is a service. It's interesting how, like, Six Comms, my business is founded upon those 6 C's of what I consider the effective ways of being accomplished in your communication. And when you said communication is a service, the first three are like what I call the human approach. So that's the connection, curiosity, and compassion, and they're best friends. And I think you should start with that always, regardless of like
Yes.
the accuracy of the language and whether the grammar's correct. That's why I say to non-native English speakers, it's really not about crossing the T's and dotting the I's. It's about those first three. Have we got the connection and the curiosity and the compassion in place? And then everything else will flow from that. The mechanics flow. That's not the starting point. The mechanics aren't the starting point.
I
Yeah.
just love it.
And I love what you're saying about ripple effect. It's so true. Very true. So if we bring it back to the practicalities of the communicating, what are the communication habits, can I say, do you think contribute to like that more meaningful, and in some ways, I mean, it can often be very transformative dialogue. How can we cultivate that type of meaningful conversation or dialogue?
Those are two of my favorite words, by the way, meaningful and transformative.
Yeah,
So I really love that you have used that. There would be many. I will just share a few that come up. The first is device-free presence. I know it has become the norm for people to use their phones when in the presence of others, but I would say getting into the habit of putting the phone away. And I don't mean on the table flipped, because when we do that, the attention is still there. Like when it buzzes, we might be, okay, wondering, oh, who's that? What's that? Right? So to put it fully away, because we're signaling to the other person, I'm fully here with you. You matter. This encounter has the ability to affect your life, my life, and the worlds that we inhabit. And I treat it with reverence. And to me, this is a very special gift that we can give people today, especially because it's becoming very rare. So when someone has that with you, it becomes like a luxury. And it just allows us to pay more attention to them, their facial cues, their body language, their tone. We're just completely there with them. So that's definitely one. Secondly, I love appreciation. We were talking about it before we started the recording, right? To get into the habit of seeing the good in someone and letting them know that specifically this is the value that you added. I see the specific positive quality in you, such as generosity or kindness or discipline. And because you did this or said this, impact on me or others, a positive impact. And I love this because when we do that, we help people feel seen, truly seen and witnessed. We are possibly helping them to grow the goodness in them because we're shining a light on the good, right? So there's this potential for it to amplify. And thirdly, we're strengthening the relationship. Yeah, we're just adding more positive elements to it. So that's something that's easy. And one of the things I help people with is I give them vocabulary, like a list of virtues and strengths. Because the more we're familiar with the vocabulary, the more we're able to detect it when it shows up in someone, right? You have a name for it. So I can send those lists if you want, just to get people resources, right? On having a language for it. So that's one that I love. The third is a combination of vulnerability and non-judgmental compassionate listening. Vulnerability to me is about revealing aspects of ourselves that are not perfect. So sharing a struggle, a mistake, a weakness, and it's just being freer with the other person and saying, I don't need to wear all these masks. I'm just going to reveal a little bit and see how you are with that, right? And if the other person also starts to reveal more of themselves, then holding that with compassion and non-judgment and stillness, I think that can be very liberating for both parties and actually healing. There are conversations I've had where something was revealed by one or both parties, and that itself was so powerful for us because it's not something that we may usually share easily with others, right? And that non-judgment really helped. I think it can also have this effect of, now, if you reveal something difficult to me and I am with you with quiet compassion and non-judgment, there is a chance that you can turn toward, the difficult aspects of yourself in the way that I was with you. So it's like you're learning the compassion from our interaction and then turning toward yourself with that. That is very beautiful. It has happened to me when people have given me that kind of very compassionate listening. And finally, there's no final, there's lots more, but one of the final things I would share is, silence, to actually allow space for silence to fall in a very naturally, without rushing in to fill it up with our words because we feel uncomfortable, but just letting it be. And for me, that can have many beautiful effects. Firstly, we allow some breath to come in. People have space to breathe. People have space to feel. People have space to reflect more deeply and dive within themselves and retrieve pearls. And the pearl can take many forms. It can take the form of more vulnerability. It can take the form of a revelation or an insight because you opened up that space of quiet. It can take the form of a powerful question that comes up. So I find silence to be very powerful. And it helps if we are comfortable with silence ourselves, that we have enough solitude in our life, we're comfortable, and we learn to trust it so that our comfort with it fills the space and the other person can also step into that.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with all of that. That's so good. Yeah, so there were 4 main points and I was writing them down. I've been a very active, attentive listener. So just to summarize for the listeners, so you talked about, first of all, the device-free presence. I just love that phrase, just device-free presence. Such a special gift to give to somebody. It just reminded me of my children. I've got an 11, 9 and 7-year-old, especially with the 11-year-old who's on his phone a bit more than the others. And I'm just constantly find myself saying, okay, put the phone down. We're going to have a conversation. I'd like some eye contact. Just to prompt him that it's good to have a conversation with eyes on each other.
I think so precious that you're doing that, really. Jonathan Haidt's work, do you know of his work? Dr. Jonathan Haidt, Haidt, The Anxious Generation. He's written a book, but he has an amazing campaign out, very active on social media, and is very much on this, what phone use has done to the younger generations and the important role that schools and parents can play.
Oh, I need to get my hands
I think
on
that's
that book.
fantastic.
Yeah,
yes.
definitely. The second thing you talked about was appreciation, seeing the good in someone and then telling them. And that's something that you really live by, because that's something that I've held on to. The second time we had a conversation at a networking event and you sent me a WhatsApp after that and was sharing how you felt and what you saw in me when we were having that conversation. And it really meant a lot. So it does. It really does. We need to see these things, but not only see them, but communicate that to somebody, because it really makes their day. You don't realize the impact of it. So thank you for that. The third one, vulnerability and non-judgmental, compassionate listening. Wow. And then number 4, silence. It's funny. We were just talking about silence yesterday. I was talking with a new first-time walker. So I do a walk and talk community here in Singapore, and we were walking around the beautiful botanic gardens. And afterwards we went for a drink, and he was saying, because he's a coach, he was saying as part of his coaching practice, it was to get comfortable with silence and how insightful that silence can be. And I noticed it about him as we were having the conversation walking around. And I said that to him. I said, I noticed that you're really comfortable with silence, because there was a few times where there was silence, but I didn't feel like I needed to fill it. And you don't always feel that from somebody. So that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think with certain people, I've also experienced that. And it's almost like a very clear lake or mirror because they're so quiet. It's not just external quiet. I think they have some inner quiet. So they are very clear mirrors. It's really beautiful and also can be uncomfortable because sometimes you hear yourself, right? And then you're like, ooh, what did I say? Single thing? All they did was be silent.
Yeah.
Quite profound.
Yeah, very profound. Very difficult because we're so used to filling the space. In what ways can integrating love, service, and growth into our work environment create a more fulfilling and human-centered culture?
I love this question because we spend most of our waking hours at work, and it is not the most life-affirming experience for many people. I think the relationships there tend to be, in many places, more task-centered and transactional. And many find it hard to bring their whole human selves to work. I would say especially the heart is often not honored in the workplace. Emotions, right? It can be very unsafe for people to express those things. So if this trinity, love, service, and growth, were to enter the workplace, I think there would be a very profound transformation in our experience of work and the workplace itself. Firstly, there would be much more collective well-being because we, along with leaders, would be making decisions that are for the greater good and thinking long-term instead of short-term profit or performance. So much more collective well-being, which will ripple out. Secondly, I have found that collaborations where there is mutual care, really positive relationships, there's a higher purpose, you're serving something beyond you, and where there's an element of personal growth. How am I growing from this project? When these three elements are present, I have found that the collaboration is magical. And what comes out of the collaboration, it has shimmer and sparkle. It's very, it's very different from, okay, we got to get the work done. Let's just get the work done. It's just these three elements bring that magic and depth because the relationship is very rich and dynamic. You're going inward, you're relating to each other in a beautiful way, you're relating to the work in a purposeful way. The third would be this whole idea of calling. And here I want to talk about Dr. Kim Cameron has written a book called Positive Leadership. And in it, he pulls together the research around job, career, and calling in one of his chapters. So researchers have found that people generally have different orientations to work. If I have a job orientation, I'm looking at work primarily as a source of financial rewards. The work in itself doesn't bring me satisfaction. If I have a career orientation, I'm looking at the work as a source of accomplishment and success. So I want more power, prestige, advancement. Now, if I have a calling orientation to work, the work in itself is meaningful and I want to make a difference through it. I want to serve the greater good. Now, it doesn't mean that people with a calling orientation don't earn money, just to be clear, because I have clients who ask me about that.
Yeah, that was my thought.
Yeah, no, let's make that clear.
The ones without the money.
Yeah. Now, what is really interesting is they have found that these three orientations don't link clearly to professions. So it doesn't mean that if you're a doctor, you have a calling orientation because, well, we just heard from a doctor who didn't, right? And it doesn't mean if you're a taxi driver, you have a job orientation, that the work is not meaningful to you. I met a taxi driver, Lisa, over 10 years ago, whose stunning smile is still appearing to my heart right now. And I want to share about her because the moment I got into her taxi, I could feel this is a different ride. She was vulnerable. She was sharing about her life. She was asking about mine. And she started sharing how she connects to her work. She said when she sees someone on a wheelchair, she would go out of the way to pick them. If you send your child alone in her taxi, she will make sure she drops your child in a safe place, even if you do not tell her that. And she said, the taxi is a great place to do good and talk good things. And then she added this line. I had to scribble all this down, Lisa. She said, we need to love others as we love our family. I was just blown, right? I said, can I take a picture? Can I take notes? I was just state of like awe. And I share that because, we're mostly professionals listening to this podcast. And I want to say she had traits of inner billionaire really fast. But for her, she's not in the transportation business. She's in the transformation business. From carrying you from point A to point B, she's doing something more for you. So inner billionaires come in all shapes and sizes. We need to be alert and vigilant to learn from them and appreciate them and take notes quickly. Yeah. So that to me is very important. Now, flowing from calling mindset to me is service. I think customer service would be transformed if we bring this trinity to the organizations because we would have more service from the heart. I find it really ironical that as customers, we want service from the heart, but the organization itself may not allow heart in the workplace for the employees. So if we were to treat people well and take care of themselves and their well, it will naturally flow to customer service. And I don't know about you, but I find that with good customer service, they can really make my day. They're taking care of my mental well-being. And with the opposite, they are adding to my lack of mental well-being. So I think it's a public service if organizations can actually nurture a culture in which service from the heart really, really happens in an inside-out way. And it doesn't even need to be external customers because there are internal customers too. All organizations have internal customers. And the last point I would make is we spend most of our waking hours at work. And then we realize that qualities like love, service, and growth matter at the end of life, right? So why don't we try to practice those things during most of our waking hours? And I think the workplace is not an easy place to practice these things. All the more it is a place to grow because you're continually tested. You're continually tested in these ways. How do you treat a customer who's being very disrespectful to you with kindness? Or with assertiveness or with wisdom. So I think if we just change the way we view the workplace, I think it can shift how we are there. And that would be an excellent use of our time because we're doing something, not just the work, but the whole experience of work becomes more meaningful.
I love it. Yeah, I agree. I'm like in my head, I'm going, preach. Yeah, preach. A lot of what you're saying reminds me of when I was working in organisation for 11 years. And I was like, at the time was known as like I don't know why I got this nickname to be the customer service guru of our team because I was the one that was doing a lot of work in that area, designing programs and talking about what customer service excellence is. And actually, I went to a conference at Marina Bay Sands many years ago. And I was so excited because I went to see and participate in a workshop by a guy called Shep Hyken. And he, a customer service, I suppose they call him a customer service excellence guru. And he came up with this concept of magical moments. And he, incidentally, funnily enough, has a taxi driver story. That's part of his keynote speech. So when you shared about your taxi driver, he uses that to basically share about these principles of being a high level of customer service. And he says the wow moments, the magical moments are not in the big, shiny, whistly, with everything all flashing moments that require a lot of resources. It's in consistently having that mindset that you're talking about and really caring for the person that you are serving. And if you come from that place, then consistently you're going to be creating what he calls those magical moments, those wow moments. And it does start internally. If you're not serving your internal customers, how can you serve the external customers? If you're not smiling at each other internally, and just simply wishing each other a good morning, how do you expect that to be done externally, because you're not role modeling it? So nobody really understands what that means.
Absolutely. I think we shouldn't be facing a need where we tell staff to smile. A smile needs to come from the heart. So it's not about training people to smile. It's about treating people well so that they naturally smile. I love it. Magic moments. And I think the more present we are, right, Lisa, we dance with the moment. The more present we are with someone, we shape shift according to the need they have. So we can very quickly serve in the way that they need.
I know there'll be some listeners, but there'll probably be quite a lot of listeners, let's be honest, that are thinking, oh yeah, this just sounds like utopia. This sounds so idealistic, but my workplace is not like that. My boss, I'm not going to change him. My team has operated like this for years and years and years, and they come with that pessimism that it's always been this way, nothing's going to change. That feels too much of a shift. It's too big a change. What would you say to those people?
Firstly, my heart goes out to them because it's real. It's in the air, in the office. It is every day. They are subject to ways of being that doesn't support their own well-being. So it's hard to do that for others. So the first is really to validate their experience. It is difficult. The second thing I would say is, if anything sparks their interest today in our conversation, feed that spark in the smallest way that nourishes you. So it doesn't take a lot for us to be kind to the colleague sitting next to us, or even just smile and say, hello, how are you? How's your day today? Small. Well, I tell my clients, small is big. Small is beautiful. Just start with yourself and those around you. That would be my invitation. And also, I would say that may come a point where if you find that you have changed into a person that you don't like anymore because of the environment, because it's crushing to your soul, and if you're unable to be part of the change, you don't feel like you can, this is not working, then maybe time to explore other possibilities as well. We need to be discerning about who am I becoming?
Yeah, and checking in with yourself, being consistent with checking in with yourself, because I think we get so caught up in the busyness, we forget that. And then 6 months goes and you pause and you're like, oh, what happened? I kind of lost me in that somewhere.
6 months or 20 years?
Or 20 years, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, of course. So you kind of touched on a couple of practical tips there around small is big, start with those small steps and that will have a ripple effect. Check in with yourself, be discerning. Is there like 3 practical tips that you could share with our listeners if they want to get started on this billionaire heart set?
So the first thing I would say is to be clear about your why before I share the tips, right? To be clear about your why. Why do you want to become an inner billionaire or develop this heart set? And I say this because there are many distractions to living in this way. The counter forces are very strong. Social media addiction, very strong materialism. All that is very, very strong. So your motivation needs to be stronger. Your purpose needs to be higher. So if you have a higher purpose that is inspiring to you, and if it has heart power like love and compassion, I think you can then hook the tips to that. So what do I mean by that? If I want to reduce suffering, and because I want to reduce suffering, I want to keep growing in my potential as a person, then that gives me motivation to do my best to cultivate these practices. So that would be an umbrella thing I would say first, to be clear about your why. So the first tip I would give is actually what you said, is check in. If your listeners want, they can go to our page, What is Inner Wealth? We have given very detailed description. They can just check in, take stock and say, what really resonates with me? Not everything may, some things may resonate. What am I already doing beautifully? Let me celebrate myself. Let me appreciate myself for what I'm doing. And then what are some areas which seem like they're growth areas? And what step can I take that feels energizing to me now, that I'm ready to take, something doable? And do I have some support for that around me? So the first is to take stock. The second is, I would say, to create your personal universe of inner billionaires.
That sounds lovely. I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Because we are influenced by the people that we spend time with. So if we want to become an inner billionaire, we want to surround ourselves with people who are also on this path. So I find it very helpful if we are looking at friends, relatives, colleagues who already have these beautiful values. They're already doing their best. Given all the challenges, they're doing their best. Having regular contact with them, intentional contact. So with some friends, Lisa, we have a monthly conversation. Like all our dates are already booked till December. We meet once a month. And that conversation is very intentional. We are supporting each other's growth. We are vulnerable. We are really authentic. We are supporting each other to serve in our communities and working through the difficulties of that. So I would ask people to get closer to the inner billionaires that you already have in your life, grow that relationship. Secondly, to look out for more, to have a radar for these people and to invite them into your life or to enter their space. I'm always on the lookout for people with such qualities. I like having them somewhere in my universe, even if I don't have time to become a friend with everyone, or they may not have time, right? But I want them somewhere. I want them in my social media. I want them in my inbox. I want them somewhere so that I am constantly in touch with those values. And it feeds me, it nourishes me, it energizes me. So I think that is very important, the personal universe. And the last thing I would add is it's very natural to sometimes feel blocks to these. I think some of your listeners go through the list, they might feel, oh, I'm really blocked in this area. I don't know how I'm going to love a stranger. I don't know how I'm going to love the person next to me because that itself is hard, right? So if there are certain persistent blocks over time and it's causing stuckness and people have not explored it enough, then to really go on a deeper personal healing journey, such as trauma healing, because it could be something that happened long ago that is preventing you from flowing in a certain direction, or it could be some beliefs that you have that love is just for family. Love is not for strangers or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So we want to release the layers that have accumulated within us due to many things, trauma, intergenerational trauma, societal conditioning, our own ego, subconscious beliefs. All these are just layers and layers to release. And then I think the inner wealth can just shine through because I think it's innate. It's in us. It's not something to take on. It's in us. I believe the virtues are in us. It's just these things that have clouded them. So how can we release the layers and let the light shine?
That was wonderful, those three. So just to recap, the first one, check in with yourself. What are you doing well? Celebrate that, acknowledge that. And maybe what are the areas that you can grow in? The second one, surround yourself with people that are on a similar path, those other inner billionaires that are doing all that great work. And number three, I've called release blockers or release them. I'm not sure how to call that, I'm afraid. Vadivu, what would you
I would say maybe inner blocks. Just inner blocks. Yeah.
So that could be trauma or something that hasn't healed that is blocking your path to grow. That's wonderful. Nice 3 tips there. And as you said, there's lots of resources on your website that will help people through that. Last question I ask every guest. As the 6 Comms is founded on the 6 C's of effective communication, just to remind you and our listeners, I've already spoken about the first 3, connection, curiosity, compassion. The other 3 are clarity, customization, and consistency. I'm going to press you, Vadivu, to give me 1 C that is resonating most with you now and why, and perhaps try to connect that with the topic we've been talking about today.
For me, it would be connection with yourself first as the foundation, connection to your own light, your own darkness, your own heart, because that is where everything begins. Everything flows from that.
So connection to self. Thank you so much. And I'm very grateful for this connection. It's been wonderful to speak to you.
Me too. Just love connecting with you. Every time it has been magical. Every single time, Lisa. Yeah.
You're going to make me blush. Let's end the episode there. Thank you.
Thank you.